can you just talk a little bit about your startup? What's like your story?
About 3 years ago, a friend of mine had started an app for his business, and we got discussing about the app. And it was right about right about the time the Me Too movement was just taking off, and there was a lot of stories about what was going on in the world. So it was in the back of my mind, and I was at a lake on a little vacay, and it came to me about a friend of mine who had a woman that worked for him, and she ended up getting on an online date situation and got busted and had an incident. And I heard about the incident and from him. We were trying to party at a party, and she called him and said, "I need to talk to you." And he takes off and goes and visits it. Then he tells me later that at the party about what took place. And maybe it's the situation with the Me Too movement taking place, and that guy in Hollywood that was getting busted, and it just made me start thinking about my own girls and my own kids. So I started just doing some research. I work from home already. I started doing some YouTube videos. I started looking at some websites, and it all of a sudden just came to me. So that when I eventually told them about it, the first thing they told me was, "Well, my kids would never be involved in that." And then I started finding out the denials of people that the situation takes place, and it's a taboo kind of a subject. And so it started to bug me about it. So I just started out of the blue looking at research. And then I was at that lake house at that time, and I told my friends about it. This is this idea that what happens if we could actually move the leverage, the anonymity from the accuser, from the guy that does it, or the girl the abuser, and move it to the person that's being abused. And that was because there was a no consequence kind of situation. And it just formulated after that. There was a lot of thought behind it, a lot of prayer time for me about it. I went for a while, and I thought, what am I doing? I'm wasting so much time. I should be making more money doing my work. And it went away for a while. And for like 6 months, and my friends, who had heard about my idea, and once it was formulated, I started thinking about it and talking to them. And what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And they were, I've got a close knit group of friends, and I think they were a little bit tired of hearing about it. But nonetheless, they they indulged it. They always like my ideas when I have a story. I mean, they can appreciate it because they know me really. They know everything about me, so they appreciated it. But they just knew you're out of your realm. You do this over here for the government, and you're over here. It just didn't make sense until I just told them one day I'm going to go do it. And in that time frame, I put it away. I was focusing on other things, and sure enough, another incident took place close to me. And when I was at that parking lot in the hospital, that's when I was really angry and said, how could this have happened to someone that close to me? And the answer was, I was going to ask you the same thing. I gave you an idea, and you didn't do anything with it. When it did hit with the close to home thing, I just said, okay, I'm gonna do this. I can't go to my grave with the idea and say I didn't finish it as hard as I could. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you got to give it your best to get there. That moment is when I decided, dump it, all of it. I'm going to go do it. And that's when I started actually creating, writing, and starting to talk to people in the business of how do you create an app.
I see. So like it sounded like you initially had some pushback from the idea. With the idea, people didn't really believe in it, and then it was because of something that happened to someone that you know personally that it really gave you that push, right? Because it's quite a lot. It takes quite a lot to actually go fully pursue the idea, like taking that leap of faith, so to speak.
Yeah, when you're I guess my age or whatever, when you're beyond the app world, to make that change had to be something, and then to stick with it had to be something. But then the right person gets in your path, and you take a giant leap. That's how it's worked.
Yeah. So you feel like you're out of your element, but with the right help, you're able to accomplish something, at least.
I think the way of life itself took me through where I needed to go, and maybe I spent a little bit more time in doubting what I was doing. But it's good. It's good. And, meeting LSL and with Lean Start, I think was a huge jump for me
Okay.
and ChkM8.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that? Yeah, since you brought it up.
Sure. We had in one of those classes that I went to, it was like an 8-week course in Kansas City, where I was meeting this one guy in there. He had a pretty good idea. He already had knew a lot. So, of course, I eventually moved my seat to where he was sitting so I could ask him some questions about how far he went and what he was doing. And he gave me some insight. And then one day I was either messaging him and we were going back and forth with each other because I think we were on a team together for some portion. And I told him about, what I should do. What was my next step after this class was over? And he said, well, he started talking about different things. He says, you need somebody to like Lean Start Lab. And he showed me a website that I think Tim had worked on, you guys had worked on. And I said, okay, well, it's a website, but it wasn't really what I was thinking. And he goes, oh, you can't believe that that's really good. And I said, well, call him and talk to him. So because of that guy, I reached out to 10. And then 10, he was really, he wasn't, I like the fact that he's not so aggressive. He wants to sell you something. He wants to know what your idea is. If your idea doesn't work, then he's not going to take you on. I learned that afterwards. But in the beginning, I don't know if I really tried to sell him my idea, but once he started getting the hang of understanding what I wanted to do, then he was willing to play. And I guess what happens is you guys don't want to get involved with someone that's always that's going to fail or going to do something that's going to cause you a bad number. But he really looked at what I was doing, and at first he was okay. I got a list of questions for you, and he was methodical about how what he was looking for and what I wanted at that moment in order to prove my point and go forward, get an MVP. So I started working with him. I told my wife, I said, God, I think I found someone that's going to really advance this thing. And she said, well, I said, yes. And this guy started telling about how he's giving me these questions to answer, and then he wants to come back and talk to me some more. And he hasn't even said anything about selling me anything yet. He just wants to know what I'm doing. And so I guess we went through that for about 2 weeks, back and forth, him asking me questions. And then he said, okay, I think we can build this for you. And then you go test it, and then we'll go from there. And I said, okay. So, and I called that guy, the guy that I met and that put me in touch with him. I said, hey, he's going to work with me. He goes, really? And he was impressed. So he's going to take on my project. And that's how it started out.
I see.